First thing we want to go over is what's happening with U.S. Steel. So U.S. Steel was trying to sell itself to Nippon Steel, which is a Japanese steel maker, to the tune of roughly $15 billion. All right, we're just gonna spend 10 minutes on this. But Biden actually blocked the deal, and the people over at U.S. Steel is mad, mad. Check it out.
It is official. President Joe Biden has decided to block Nippon Steel's proposed $14.9 billion purchase of U.S. Steel. The decision could be a fatal blow to a merger plan that has been contentious, to say the least. In a statement, the president writes in part, "It is my solemn responsibility as president to ensure that now and long into the future, America has a strong domestically owned and operated steel industry." He goes on to say, U.S. Steel will remain a proud American company, one that's American owned, American operated, by American union steelworkers, the best in the world. While the move gained the praise of the United Steelworkers leadership, others fear it may spell the demise of the steelmaking region. KDK lead investigator Andy Sheehan now with reaction to the president's move today.
President Biden's decision to block Nippon's $15 billion offer to buy U.S. Steel is being met with disappointment here in West Mifflin, where the Japanese steelmaker vowed to spend $1 billion to upgrade the Irvin plant. The Irvin plant's hot strip mill is one of 4 U.S. Steel operations in our region. And West Mifflin Mayor Chris Kelly has taken Nippon at its word that it would make monumental investments in this plant and the rest of the Mon Valley.
They put it in writing. They put it into the union that they would put over $1 billion in. No layoffs, no plant closings, keeping the 10-year status quo or improving. Nobody puts that in a business deal today. It's given them everything they wanted.
But President Biden has invoked his right to block the deal, citing what he calls credible evidence it threatens to impair the national security of the United States, a position applauded by David McCall, the president of the United Steelworkers Union, who has opposed the deal from the start, despite support from the rank and file.
We have no doubt that the president's decision was the right move for our members and for America's national security.
Let me tell you what that means when they say it is a problem for U.S. security, right? Because a lot of people don't understand it, and so many people are misinformed, uninformed, and don't understand the politics of it, the security of it, and then the financials of it. All right. And I've been blessed to not only work in the steel industry, but to understand the politics of it and then look at it from a business perspective. And this is one of the things, the very few things that I cannot hold Biden accountable for, because I actually believe that it is a good thing. And more importantly, it also aligns with the same thing that Trump said that he would do. Trump himself said that he would prevent U.S. Steel from being sold to a Japanese company. Now, Anton, what about the preservation of jobs? Anton, what about the fact that we don't want any more layoffs? What about the steel closings and things like that? Okay, well, let's have a conversation about it really quickly. All right. So, Trump himself said that he actually would veto a deal, and this is exactly what Biden did, because A, it would threaten national security, and B, we don't need our infrastructure, certain parts of the infrastructure, owned by a foreign company. Well, Anton, what does that mean? Well, even though the Japanese are not our enemy, they are actually our ally. Japanese are one of our allies. What happens is when you have critical infrastructure and logistics interrupted and owned by a foreign entity, it then controls our ability to be able to defend ourselves. So, for example, if they own the steel industry and US Steel is one of the largest steel makers inside of the United States of America, what happens if you have a war breakout? What happens if you have a national emergency or you have something similar to a pandemic? Now you have a foreign entity, because it's a difference between foreign companies doing business here in the United States of America and it becoming a national security logistics infrastructure problem. You then put them in control of what happens so much in the United States of America, and we sell out our future. And so we mortgage our future because of what we feel is best for the community or best for jobs at that time. And so we wouldn't be able to build anything. We wouldn't be able to sustain anything. If you look at any of the previous wars, they basically leveraged American companies to then allow for them to build different things that we use to defend ourselves. You cannot have them in charge of critical companies that are detrimental to the United States of America. You cannot. You cannot let them control, even if they are our allies, you cannot let them control every single thing that happens inside of the United States of America. It put us in a precarious position even to even negotiate on tariffs, because that's one of the reasons why we're in the position that we're in now. We allow for foreign companies to control everything that happens inside of the United States of America. Take Chicago. Go over to Chicago. Chicago don't even own its own streets. Chicago sold its streets during the 2008 financial meltdown, housing crisis, and they needed money, and so they got so desperate that they sold their streets over to a foreign company, over to, I believe, Dubai or the UAE or some company over there for $1 billion. They don't even get their streets back until 2080 or 2075. They've made that amount and 10 times over. If Chicago even want to have a parade, if Chicago even closes off a street, they have to pay outside vendors, outside companies to even be able to close down their streets what they would have made in that day in a specific fee. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Africa, they sold everything over to China. So much of Africa and its infrastructure through bad loans was sold over to China, and now they basically forfeited. And China owns large swaths and large infrastructure and so much of Africa that they basically got them in their pocket. They're controlling everything that's happening with the legislation over in Africa in a lot of places. Biden is absolutely right on this one. He's 100% right to prevent them from being able to sell it. The question becomes not if he should have stopped it, but how, as we as Americans, can incentivize U.S. Steel to reinvest back into itself. Let's continue.
Throughout the past year, as the proposed transaction was under review, the union's first and only concern has been the long-term viability of our facilities and our members' jobs.
But the decision leaves the future of steelmaking here in doubt. In a statement, U.S. Steel said, quote, "We continue to believe that a partnership between Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel is the best way to ensure that U.S. Steel, and particularly USW represented facilities, will be able to compete and thrive well into the future." And while Nippon promised to keep the headquarters in downtown Pittsburgh and not shut down any operations, U.S. Steel has warned it may pull up stakes if the deal is voided. That prompted Governor Shapiro to issue this warning, quote, "I expect U.S. Steel to uphold their commitments and refrain from threatening the jobs and livelihoods of Pennsylvanians who work at the Mon Valley Works and U.S. Steel headquarters and their families." But Kelly fears the worst.
But they walk away. They walk away, and what's left? This is our strong ally. There's no national security threat. This is plain and simple politics at its worst.
No, I don't think that's what it is. I think that there's more to it than that. The question is, how do we come up with a solution to allow for it to be able to stand on its own, but incentivize them to reinvest back into themselves? For far too long, what's been happening is you've had these foreign companies, like in China, dumping cheap steel and trash steel over into the United States of America. How do I know? Because I was working for a steel mill. I was working at Rouge Steel, formerly Ford Steel, at the time, which then got sold over into a Russian company, which then resold itself over and over again. And then they also actually started to lose jobs. And I got friends that still work over there, over in Local 600. I have friends that still work over there. And we used to have to compete against cheap Chinese products and foreign companies dumping cheap steel inside the United States of America and making substandard parts with it. And what happened was they undercut the price because we are a free market, right? It was mortgaged by previous legislators prior to us that created an opportunity for people to be able to take advantage of the American economy, and then we didn't get it back in on our side. And so what happened was they dumped cheap products in order for us to compete. We never continued to reinvest back into our own infrastructure and our own companies, such as U.S. Steel. And now you see a situation where people are trying to sell themselves to foreign companies because they so far behind. in their technology to continue to manufacture great products. They using 60 and 70-year-old technology to make steel nowadays because we couldn't afford to reinvest profits back into the companies and allow for us to still compete on that level. We was losing money so bad. And so you have to start to come up with legislation that helps American companies and take away from us continuing to give money to Ukraine and all of these other places outside of the United States of America and make America great again. That's the whole idea of it. So I'm interested to see how this is going to play out. Um, the workers are complaining; they think that they're going to lose their jobs. But I'll stay on top of it. I'll pay attention to it. I do think that Biden did the right thing, and it aligns with what Trump said that he wanted to do. All right.